special webinar focusing on all aspects of relocating to France. I'm Karen Tate. I shall be your host for the next hour. I'm a freelance journalist. For the past 20 or so years, I've been editing French property news magazine, and I also contribute to titles such as the Sunday Times in the UK. I'm joined by our panel of experts who will be covering everything from buying a French property to applying for a visa to healthcare and insurance, currency and more. So I'll just hand over to them first of all to let them introduce themselves. So Joanna.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Joanna Leggett from LEGGETT Immobilier. So we've been estate agents based in France since 1999. So we're real experts in people moving across to France from all around the world really. Started off from the UK and then we've got international clients coming from everywhere now. So we're here to help you and I hope we can answer some of your questions this evening.
It's lovely, thanks Joanna. And Tracy?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Tracy Letty from LBS and I've been working and living in France for over 3 decades. So I kind of made it my mission to help people, you know, like yourself tonight who are watching, who want to move, live or create a business in France. LBS is now a team of 5 people. We're all people with experts and professionals, and we really help you transition to France. So it will obviously be visas, healthcare, driving licenses, car registrations. We do business creation and management, taxes, and so much more. So if you're thinking of moving to France, don't hesitate to reach out, and we're looking forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thank you, Tracy, and over to you, Paulette.
Hi everybody, my name is Paulette Booth. I'm the co-founder and director of Agence AXA International. We're an AXA agency based in France. We're a team of English speakers. I have a team of 10. We look after everything from insurance, savings, investments, everything that you would need in France. We also manage claims in-house with an English speaker as well. So that's quite important if you do get to the point of needing to claim. There's no point having an insurance if you can't then speak to anybody when you need to claim. So, the whole team is English speakers there to help you.
Thank you, Paulette. And Tom?
Hello there. Yeah, I'm Tom Maholian. I've worked for Lumon, which is one of the longest established currency brokers in the UK. I've been here since 2003. We were formerly called Foreign Currency Direct, so we've seen the market change quite dramatically over the years, but we pride ourselves on rates and personal service these days as well. So lots of different companies doing what we do, but we're one of the more established firms, and you'll hear a little bit more about what we have to offer during this phone call, during the webinar, I should say.
Thanks, Tom. So let's start by looking at property, buying a French property. Joanna, when people are first starting out, what should they consider? How can they best search for a French property, especially when they're not even in France, they're in another country? And when should they start to contact agents and organise viewing trips?
Well, it's a very, very big question. And of course, talking tonight is a relocation special. So it means that people are actually relocating to France. While we're here. So they're actually going to move, you know, all of their belongings, all of their life and moving over to France. So one of the first things I would always suggest is to do recce trips, because if you're going to be moving lock, stock and barrel, you need to really have researched your area and make sure that that's the area you want to be in. You know, depending on age, whether you need schools for your children, or if you're retired, how far you're going to be away from a hospital, because you may have more medical appointments and things like that. If you want to be returning to go and see grandchildren or to go and see family in the UK or the States or Australia even, you know, you want to make sure that you have got those access points to international airports, or if you're going to be driving backwards and forwards, you may want ferries because you might have pets. So when relocating, the most important thing is to really, really research your area and make sure that everything that you have that you're going to need, make yourself a checklist, go through all of those, and then start having a look online. You know, it's so easy these days. Back in the day, you know, when we first started at Leggett, everyone had to drive around local estate agent shops and look in windows, you know, but these days 90% of searches are done online, so you can do so much research online. and you can make inquiries on properties and speak to agents. You know, we're a big family firm and have been established for years, and we cover the whole of France. But you can talk to us, even if you're not ready to buy right now, but you want to know information on the area. We're more than happy to help you. And, you know, like Tracy and Paulette can give you so much information, so that when you're ready to go ahead or to travel over and make that purchase, you're fully informed. Because relocating, you know, particularly in France, it's such a large country, it's the biggest country in Western Europe. The areas, you know, completely vary from north to south. You know, there's weather conditions. It could be very hot in the south, it could be very mild in the centre, and it could be colder, you know, in the north or the Alps, for example. So you've really got to consider all of those, the type of architecture that you like, the type of lifestyle you would like. I would say that most of our clients move to France for the lifestyle, but everybody's lifestyle is very different. Do you want skiing? Do you want, you know, mountains? Do you want, you know, lots of mountain biking? Or do you want to be on the beach and have a cosmopolitan life in the south of France? Or do you want, you know, a really nice lifestyle, wine and cheese countryside life with the locals and the French locals? There's so much variety in France to choose from, and I think that's the most important thing, is to start researching, tick off all those tick boxes, narrow down your area, and then come and do some recce trips and look at some properties so you can see exactly what you can get for your money.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Joanna. Very good advice. So obviously budgets play a big part in a property search. And understandably, many buyers have concerns about navigating the currency process, you know, transferring their pounds or their dollars into euros, and especially when it's, you know, a big amount for a property. So, Tom, can you explain why they should use a currency company rather than their high street bank or their usual bank that they may have been with for many years?
I can do indeed. So I'm hoping we've got lots of people outside of Europe that need the currency service as well on this call. So typically a currency broker such as ourselves, we can offer a much more personalized and bespoke service to our clients. So it's a very simple process. So once you're onboarded by our team, which involves some quick questions about what you're looking to do, your home address, a few bits of personal data, we will then send you the request for the identification, and once you've agreed the terms, you can then be onboarded by our team. So as I said, I've worked here for Lumon for over 22 years. Most of our dealing team, which we deal with new clients, have been here in excess of 15 years as well. So arguably, we're by far and away the most experienced team in the UK doing what we're doing. So our primary role is to make sure clients are offered both competitive rates compared to using a bank, as well as guiding clients through the process. So as a firm, we've been trading since 2000, and one of the longest established companies in the UK doing what we're doing. We've also assisted over 70,000 clients during this time, and our turnover is roughly about 9 billion in the last financial year, which you just finished last week as well. So France is arguably our #1 country for both buyers and sellers, closely with Spain. So we have a huge amount of experience regarding both moving money to France and moving money out of the country as well. So as a firm, we offer various different types of contracts, including primarily spot and forward contracts, as well as things such as stops and limit orders. So a spot contract is very useful for the payment of the compromis de vente purchase, and the forward for the acte de vente, which is usually 2 to 3 months later, when you need to actually complete, and that's when you get your keys. So when you hold money with Lumon, for your protection, it's kept separate from our own company funds. We place your money in segregated accounts with major banks, ensuring it's always available to you and protected from business risks as well. So in some cases, rather than placing your funds in a separate account, we'll also use an insurance policy to keep your money protected. And we also regularly review the suitability of the people we work with. So trades are typically carried out with your personal dealer, which would be me or one of the other team. We'll let you know what's happening with rates, whether it's pounds into euros, US dollars into euros, or any other currency that we may offer. There's also no hidden fees when Lumon transacts with you. It's a rate you'll be offered will include any costs for servicing your transfers. So when booking the trade, a confirmation will be sent via email, which confirms details of the transaction, as well as our bank account details for you to pay us. And then when sending money to France for a property purchase, at this point, if you don't have a property, it's very difficult to get a bank account. So in the first instance, when you're paying for your property, we can send money directly to the notaire for you. So you absolutely don't need an account to start with.
That's great, thanks, Tom. So primarily you are the experts and can be trusted, which must put a lot of people's minds at rest there.
There is indeed, yeah.
Moving on to moving now. Non-EU nationals, including British and Americans, need a visa to start the legal relocation process. So, Tracy, how should those people who don't intend to work in France, for example, retirees, how should they go about the process, and what requirements are there, for example, income or healthcare and so on?
Yeah, you know, moving to France permanently, you know, is different to second home. Obviously, there's a lot more involved. It takes time, it's preparation, and like Joanna said, you know, you have to really do a lot of research on that. Visa is just one aspect of relocation, but yes, it is an important aspect, of course, because if you don't get it right, of course, the dreams of living in France can be a little bit more complex. So it's important that we touch on this. So for those that want to move to France but have no intention of working, okay, so no work, no business, then they have the option, of course, it's the long stay visitors visa. You've probably all heard of this visa. It's a very popular one, but again, I emphasize it's no work and no business. It's a 1-year visa. It gets renewed every year in France, although your application starts from your country of origin. Be careful to tick the right boxes, because we've seen a lot of people just recently ticking the wrong boxes and getting ones that are not renewable in France. So temporary ones are not renewable in France, okay? So let's just take a little look at the process, if you like, just to simplify it for you. So I say it's a 5-step process, really. You need to fill in your application online, of course, on the France Visa website. You need to book your appointment at the TLS centre. So whether that's America or the UK, it's the TLS who manage that. You then need to go to your appointment, and that's where you're going to hand over all your famous documents and your evidence. You will then collect your visa, which will be in your passport. And the last step is the very important one, is the validation of that visa once you are in France, and not to be neglected, because of course it triggers the immigration process behind the scenes. So that's kind of in a nutshell the process. From a criteria perspective, we're really looking at you need to show that you're not going to be a financial burden on the French state or a burden on the French healthcare, okay? So you need to prove that you've got sufficient funds to live in France for the whole year of your visa, as well as have private healthcare from €0. And obviously, I think Paulette will cover more on the insurance side of things, what needs to be covered from the insurance aspect. But one thing that is important to know is you only need to have it for your first year private insurance to come into France on a long stay visitors visa. Once you're in the French healthcare system, you can maybe opt for a top-up insurance. And again, I'm sure Paulette can help you with that as well. Financially, the criteria financial, you need to be shown a minimum, I would say, of about €1,500 per adult. If you're a couple coming together as a retiree, then €2,000, you can round it to €2,000. Now, these numbers are not exact, and the reason they're not exact is because the consulate do not come out with official numbers that you need to be able to move to France. Really what they're looking to show that you are independent and not going to be a burden. So really that's a minimum amount. You need to have more if possible, and this can show up in a number of ways: pensions, private investment funds, rental income, savings, and of course if you own your property as a cash buyer, which I'm sure many of you are, that's going to help because you don't have mortgage, you've no outgoings, so that can go towards your finance situation. So a good one if you're working with Joanna and her team to get yourself a property. Obviously, we've helped thousands of people with their initial visas and renewals over these past 15 years. And I think the most important bit of advice I give you at this stage is, if you are unsure of which visa to go for, if you are unsure if you have the right documents or right financial situation, then reach out. This is what we're here for. You'll get the clarity on your situation, on your documents that you need, the financial situation. And really at that time, I can tell you if there's any red flags to look at now, so you can prepare that ready for your visa meeting. So I hope that's giving you an overview of the long stay visitors visa and will help you make the right moves.
Thanks, Tracy. So as you say, you know, you are there as a helping hand. People can go it alone if they want, but for peace of mind, reassurance, they can come to you and you will help them through that process. Okay, then, so you touched on the healthcare requirements, but Paulette, can you explain in more detail what healthcare cover is required? Because this is something that worries a lot of people.
Yes, certainly. The healthcare that's required to accompany a visa application, a lot of people can get mixed up and think, oh yeah, an annual travel insurance that will cover me for accident and emergency. It absolutely won't. It won't be accepted to accompany your visa application. It needs to be a policy that's called a private health insurance, or PHI, as some people call it. And it's specifically going to have the minimum requirements that's needed for your visa application, which is a minimum of 30,000 cover and medical repatriation. As Tracy touched on, as part of your visa, you shouldn't be a burden on the on the French system. So they want to know that you've got something in place so that if you're unwell or you have an accident when you first arrive in France, that cover is in place. That cover needs to be in place for the whole duration of the visa, not just for, oh, I'll get a policy and once I'm in France I can cancel that. It needs to be in place for the whole validity of your visa. Tracy also mentioned that once it's not normally needed when you renew your visa. We do have a case of quite a few people who've kind of forgotten to apply for a French social security number and do need it on the renewal. Generally, that shouldn't be required because once you're in France, which I think I'll explain later, you can then apply for your social security number. So you shouldn't need it at renewal. But if you do, we're there to help you. The policy shouldn't mention any medical exclusions. People have pre-existing medical conditions. We can help people from all kinds of ages, and as I know, the older you get, things start creeping in. You've got pre-existing medical conditions that you need to mention. Where we don't offer this type of visa policy through AXA France, we've actually got a broker side of our agency called L'ENEMIE that is a specialist in visa health insurance, and we work with several different insurers. So if you do have pre-existing medical conditions, we can find an insurer for that. If you don't, or you're under a certain age, we can find a policy for that. So one size doesn't fit all. We can find a policy that will fit your unique situation. Just to add on to that, if you are coming from the UK and you're eligible for what's called an S1, which usually means that you've reached UK state retirement age. There are other exceptions, but we'd be here all night if I explained all of those. So generally, you've reached UK state retirement age, you're eligible for an S1. That S1 will accompany your visa application as the health insurance. Because that gives reciprocal rights in France for that health insurance, for the health treatment. However, when you first arrive, you're not going to apply for your social security number on day one. Or day two, probably. You've just moved. You're getting, you're into your lovely house that you've just bought through Joanna. You've got lots to do. You're not going to apply for that number straight away. We would very much recommend taking a temporary private health insurance to just cover those first few weeks or months to cover accident and emergency. Because if you're involved in an accident or you have a medical emergency, the hospital treatment can be quite pricey. So it's not obligatory to take it, but it's very recommended even if you've got your S1, but it's slightly different to the policy that you take to accompany the visa if you haven't got an S1.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula. And just to clarify, it is very different from a travel insurance, a normal travel insurance you take out for a holiday, isn't it?
Absolutely. And people can think, oh yeah, I've got an annual travel insurance policy. One, it probably won't be accepted, but if you look at that annual travel insurance policy, generally it's for stays of a maximum of 30 days at a time. You're moving to France, you're here permanently, you've made the move, you've relocated. You're not going to go back in 30 days time and then have another trip. It's absolutely not an annual travel insurance policy, and it doesn't cover lost baggage and delayed flights and things. It's specifically for health related issues.
Okay, thanks. And I suppose that also highlights how easy it is to perhaps be tripped up during the visa process, if you are doing it yourself, and why, if you had thought you were covered by your travel policy, Tracy would have, and you were speaking to Tracy to help you through the process, she would pick up on that straight away. So,
Absolutely.
okay then. Getting back to property, Joanna, could you explain the process and the timeline of a French property purchase? What can people expect and at what sort of stages?
Okay, so generally speaking, when we take a property on, we try to get as much of the diagnostic reports done prior to the sale, because everything in order to sign a compromis de vente, which is the exchange of contracts, we need a certain amount of paperwork in advance. So when we take on the mandate, we've got the act, we've got all the cadastral references, we've got all of that information, and we have a DPE, which is the energy report. We can't advertise the property without that. So what will happen is you'll be able to see that energy report, you'll be able to see the cadastral plans, etc. And if you're happy with that, then you can make an offer. If the offer is accepted by both parties, then in our company, we actually have an in-house contracts team that will draw up that compromis de vente and work alongside the notaire with you. The benefit of that is obviously if you don't speak French, we'll translate it into English for you free of charge. There's no charge for that, and it's a kind of hand-holding service, so we'll take you through all the things that you need to know with the notaire. So you'd sign your compromis de vente. The buyer always signs first, and then it's sent to the vendor to sign. Since COVID and modern days, you can DocuSign, so you don't need to physically be here to do that. We can send that initial compromis out to you and then to the vendor, and then everybody gets an actual copy of it in the post. After that compromis signed, you have a 10-day cooling off period. So say you'd come over to France, loved the property, went back and had cold feet, or anything happened, or your circumstances changed, or you didn't want to proceed, you can pull out of after signing that compromis within that 10 days. After the 10 days, you can't, but in the compromis de vente, you can put in suspensive clauses. These suspensive clauses could be like, if I'm getting a mortgage and the mortgage was refused, then obviously you can pull out and there's no charge for that. If you were saying, I want planning permission for a swimming pool, or I want to have permission that barn can be changed into living accommodation, all of those sorts of things can be put into the initial contract when you sign it. So then you'll have your 10 days come up. Now, all of those permissions might not be back by then, but on that 10th day, you need to send your 10% deposit, whether that comes through Lumon, if you don't currently have a French bank account, or you don't want to send it direct to the notaire yourself. You can do it either way, bearing in mind that Lumon, and I'm saying this from currency potential, will always save you money. So if you're sending it through the bank, the rates are much better going through a currency broker, as we always recommend, than going direct. But anyway, you'd send your money over to the notaire, and the notaire would hold that 10% deposit in the holding account until the sale completes. Now, say, for example, the mortgage came back negative, we're not going to accept it, or no, you can't change that building into, whatever, into habitation, then you have the right to withdraw from the sale because you've got a negative on your clauses. If all of them come back and it's all fine, everything's tick, 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 and you decide, I just don't want to buy it now, you would be liable for losing the 10% deposit. So you do need to be careful of that. Sometimes you can win it back, but sometimes you can't because of all the work and everything that has gone through the notaires and the vendor. So anyway, so generally speaking, it takes about 3 months. Now, some sales can take longer with inheritance laws and things in France. Sometimes you can have a house that's been inherited by 9 people and everybody has signed the compromis and obviously ready for the final act. This doesn't happen that often anymore, but it can happen. Generally speaking, a sale we'll put from start to finish can take 3 to 4 months to go through, depending on how quickly we get the paperwork in from the vendors, because we have to send out the DPE reports, but also electricity. If it's got a septic tank, that has to have a report to say whether it conforms or not. Lead paint has to be checked for lead paint. That's not something that you would pull out from a sale. It just advises you where it is. So if you're stripping old shutters, for example, you remember to wear a mask. And obviously, and termites. Termites is very rare these days in France because they were treated so long ago, but the termite report has to be valid within a 3-month period. So if the sale had gone over 3 months, we have to get another termite report done so that it's valid at the time of sale. But generally speaking, it's such a straightforward process in France. There's no gazumping, there's nobody right at the final act coming in with a better price and, you know, you lose the property. France is a very safe, you know, once that compromis de vente is signed, and once that vendor is signed, you're in, you're locked in, and the sale is completely safe. I know with sales in the UK, because it's happened to me myself, you can exchange contracts and complete on the same day. So everything could go pear-shaped. But France is probably one of the safest systems in the world, in fact, of the sales process. So it's a very easy, the buyer's always protected all the way down the line, and it does take sort of, you know, three months, I would say, from start to finish. We have turned them around in 6 weeks, but generally speaking, I would say it's going to be 3 months, a 3-month sale.
Lovely, thanks, Joanna. So just to quickly recap, the buyer and seller sign the initial sales contract, the compromis de vente, at the start of the sales process after a price has been agreed. Then the buyer has the 10-day cooling off period, and in that time the buyer can pull out for any reason within that 10-day period, but the seller doesn't have that same
They signed their listing for the whole sale, yeah.
And then the notaire does all the searches, checks everything out on the property, which normally takes 3 or 4 months. Then everybody gets together, buyer, sellers, in the notaire's office if you're doing it in person, and that normally is 3 or 4 months later, and that's the signing of the acte de vente. So it is a very straightforward process, really, and as you say, very safe. You can't be gazumped, which is the absolute horror of for British buyers buying in the UK, which most people around the world wouldn't believe, but that's a whole different subject. Okay.
You can also sign by proxy. So if you are miles away and it's difficult to come on the actual signing day, you can have it officially signed by, you can sign a proxy so that the notaire can sign on your behalf. So you're not physically there. I always say to clients, you know, you're getting your keys as you sign, you're getting the keys for the house. I always like to take a client round to look at the house before we go to the notaire's for signing as well, just to check it's still there and everything's in place, although it always is, but an agents can do it by video as well. But yeah, it's just a nice feeling. Everybody signs, you get your keys on the day of signing, and the house is yours. So but if you can't get there, it can be done by proxy.
Because it is quite a formal, enjoyable affair. So as you say, it's something, it's an experience. And you touched on visiting the property beforehand. French property is sold as seen on the day, so it's always a good idea to look at it before you sign the final contract, in case they've, I don't know, taken out the kitchen that you're expecting to be there or something.
It's quite, as you say, it's quite an affair for the French as well, because like, especially in the rural countryside, you know, going to sign the house is a really special event for them, and they'll all come dressed up in their finest clothes. You know, they might be from farmers all their lives, and they'll come in their finest clothes, and everybody goes for a little Perot after the signing. It's quite an official thing in the rural countryside, which is really nice.
It's a lovely way to start ownership of a new property, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
So once you've got your property, you may have bought it fully furnished. There are plenty of French properties sold that way, or you may be going to the brocante and buying all lovely antique furniture, or nipping to IKEA or whatever. But chances are you want to move your household belongings over, some or all. And on that topic, on removals, our friends over at Burke Bros, who have been moving people to France for many years, decades in fact, have provided us with a few tips. We have got a slide which hopefully we can move on to, although we did have a few technical issues with this. So while that's happening, if it's going to happen, I shall run through the tips they have provided for us. So first of all, they said choose the right removals company, and of course that sounds kind of obvious, but you should do your homework before you book, and specifically you should look for a removals company that specializes in international moves, particularly ideally to France, don't just book your local removals company who moved you in the UK. And you should check for membership, if you're in the UK, with the British Association of Removers, known as BAR, and also they have FIDI accreditation. It's really important because both these ensure professional standards and also financial protection. So the next step would be to schedule a pre-move survey. So this can be done by your removals company. They can do it in person or they can do it by video these days, and it allows them to assess the volume, so the size of lorry or containers you might need, and any special packing needs, and identify any access issues such as narrow streets in little French towns or tricky stairs in an older French property. And they can then give you a really detailed, accurate quote. And this is also a good point to ask them any questions about the move and clarify things to do with customs or paperwork. Their third point is be smart about volume and costs. Now this relates to, you may not be moving your entire household. In the UK you may do it, but you're moving over to France or, or from further afield. You only really want to bring those things that matter to you, and it's a great opportunity to clear out everything you don't need. So you can ask about part load options. This involves you sharing space with other customers, so you need to be more flexible on dates, but it can be really cost effective. So that's worth asking if you've got a smaller load. Their fourth tip is packing properly will give you peace of mind, and they say use high quality materials, BAR approved if possible, but for valuable or fragile items such as art or antiques, anything breakable, it's a good idea to let the professionals handle it. So speak to your mover early so they can make all the appropriate arrangements. And finally, their fifth tip was plan for delivery and storage. Moving days don't always go exactly to plan. There may be delays. You may sell your UK property well before you buy your French property. So there are good options, storage options, which you should explore with your removal company. And this can be containerized storage or self-access units. So there's some great tips from Burke Bros. Thank you for those. And we shall move on to our next topic, which is back to visas. So Tracy, we've looked at retirement visas or visas for people who won't be working in France. How is the process different for people who want to work when they get there?
So, so if they've already moved to France and then they decide they want to work or have a business in France, that's a bit difficult, of course, because if you move to France on a long stay visitor visa, which we discussed just at the beginning of this webinar, once they get in France, they're going to have to modify that, of course, because you cannot work or have a business on a long stay visitors visas. Okay, that's absolutely not allowed. Okay, so just let's get that on the table straight away. It's a question that comes a long time. So what will happen is, let's say you get to France, you're living your best life in France, and then you find either a job where you think I've got a really good business idea, or I'm fed up of drinking wine around the pool, I think I'd like to set up a consultancy business. Okay, great, but you can't do that in the first year. When you want to modify a visa, despite what you might hear or read on the internet, you cannot do it the first year, because when you sign a long stay visitors visa, you sign a document saying you will not work in France. That's a legally binding document, and if you try and modify it that first year, it will get rejected. We've seen people come to us with a rejection letter because they've signed that document. So forget it the first year. Really what will happen is, how should you go about it is you wait until you get to, you've done your first renewal, so you're in your second year in France, you've got your residency card as a visitor, and then you can start working on your modification. Okay, so really what you will do is, if it's a business, let's say you want to set up a business, then okay, you will do a business file. So you need the same documents that you would need for a visa, so a business and financial plan, proof of earnings, where you'll be living, and you also need what's called an avis de situation favorable, and that comes from which is basically the Minister of Economy, and they give you basically inputs on whether the business will be viable in France or not. And you take all of that to the prefecture, of course, to work on the modification, and that can take anything from 6 to 8 months. It can be quite torturous. But if you have a good business plan and you have all the documents, we obviously do this, it's worked, it's not a problem, but it's not an easy process to go through, despite what some people say. If it's a salaried position, so again, you've come to France and then you found that the local, the local bar wants to employ you, fabulous, but you have to go through a modification to get a salaried visa, okay? And this basically means your employer will have to reach out to the DREET. So again, it's the Minister of the Economy. You have to reach out to get a work permit. Once you have the work permit, then you request your modification to a salary residency card. Which residency card will allow you to depend on what contract you have, what your salary is going to be. You know, if you've got like a CDI or a CDD contract, if your earning levels are high, what your qualifications are, and if your employer has done the right work, because of course he has to see if he can find somebody else to do this job as well before he can employ you. So there's some hoops to jump through, to be quite honest. So it's not as simple as it sounds. There are some situations when I would advise going for a visitor's visa and then modifying it later on. Oftentimes when it's a hospitality business, when you don't actually have the property, because of course you can't create a hospitality business in France and request a business visa if you haven't yet found that amazing property where you can, you know, rent it out and things like that. So on the other hand, if you have a good business idea or you have the chance of getting a job, then do apply for the right visa at first. And as we are on the subject of business visas, and talents visas are really important at the moment. For those of you who are watching this, if you do have questions on just the business visa side of things or the talents visas, I'm doing a webinar on the 17th of November just around that, because we get lots of questions on those. And I know for a lot of people watching this, maybe they're more interested in the long status visa, but for business visas, I'm just doing just the LBS, and the LBS team only are doing a Ask Me Anything on the 17th of November. So that might be the one just to get some questions on that one.
That's great. Thanks, Tracy. It is obviously a very big subject. There are different working visas and the business plan can be quite complex. So that's good to know. Okay, so as we touched on before, healthcare is a big issue for people moving to France, something they worry about, especially you know, if they require repeat prescriptions or anything like that. So Paulette, can you explain how once you're in France you access French state healthcare, and are costs covered?
Okay, so there's different ways you can apply for your social security number depending on whether you move over with your S1, you move over with a work contract, or if you move over with a visitor visa. Regardless of that, everybody's got the right to apply for a social security number once they've been in France for 3 months. Some people can do it earlier, but let's just start with 3 months. When you make your application, which you will need lots of documents to apply for your social security number, and Tracy is very well placed to help you do that. You're not going to get the number straight away. On average, 3 to 6 months. Yeah, I'm looking at Tracy's face. It depends if you have a very well presented dossier put forward by Tracy. But yes, you know, once you've applied, as soon as you get that social security number, you can then start going to see, you know, French doctor and things like that, and get your healthcare covered. Now, people moving over from the UK are quite surprised that you pay for healthcare in France. You can pay upfront. There's different systems, but generally you will pay, and then you will get some of it refunded by the state. Average 70%, but there's more variations than I can probably count. Let's say for average 70%. And then the rest is covered by what's called a mutual top-up, which is like a private health insurance policy, which we can help with. That can be quite a surprise for people coming from the UK. Our clients coming from the US are absolutely shocked at how cheap healthcare is in France. It's amazingly cheap. But even for our clients coming from the UK, yes, you're going to pay for that upfront. Say, for example, you go to the doctors, the cost of a doctor, there's different sectors, but you know, your normal doctor in your local village, it's going to cost €30 when you go for a visit. within a few days, you're going to get 70% of that back from the state, and then probably 2 days after that, you get the rest back from your mutual. And it's all linked. You know, you don't have to kind of apply for it through one. As soon as you're given your carte vitale, which is a little green card, like a credit card size, that's all going to work out automatically from that point on. Even when you apply for your social security number, you're not necessarily going to get the carte vitale straight away. But it's fine. You can still access healthcare system. You just get called what we all call the brown form, because yeah, not many Brits or not many Anglophones can pronounce the. I'm probably dreadful at saying it as well. Avoid the swan. So let's call it the brown form, and it's. Surprise, surprise, it's a brown form that you fill in and you send off to Social Security, and then they process it and you get your 70% back, and then that feeds through to your mutual. So that's it's really quite easy. Things like dental, optical, hearing aids are treated quite differently. And then that very much depends on the level of mutual you have. We've probably got about 32 different levels of mutual. You know, again, like the visa insurance, it depends on your needs, on your budget, what you want to have covered. Do you wear glasses? If you don't wear glasses, you probably don't need a mutual with, you know, something that's going to give a good refund for glasses. If you've got children who have braces, you know, you want something that's going to have better dental care. So it depends on the different levels that you want. So, you know, there's a policy for every budget and for your level of needs of what you want. And you can even, some people say, do you know what, I'm really healthy, I don't go to the doctors very much. And that's fine. We have a policy that covers hospital only, because if you're admitted to hospital and you have an operation, you're going to pay for the room, you're going to pay for the anaesthetist, for the specialist. Oh, I've just realised my webcam's slid back again, hasn't it? And you're looking at the top of my computer cabinet. So yeah, there's lots of different levels that you can have in a safe. You want just hospital only to cover for those real emergencies, that's fine, right up to one that's going to cover absolutely everything. And it just depends on what your budget is and what you're willing, what you need to pay, and your needs. And I'll try and fix my camera.
Yeah. Thanks, Paulette. You were just slipping away there, but that was great information you kept giving us. So just switching back to currency, Tom, you mentioned before about the different currency contracts. So can you explain a little bit more about how they work and why people should use them?
Yeah, of course. So the most popular type of contract is something called a spot contract, which is whereby the price is offered and full settlement is typically due within 2 working days of fixing the price. So most people will use this in the first instance to pay for the initial compromis de vente transfer. So the second contract, which is very popular, particularly during 2025, when we've had an enormous amount of movement on both dollar-euro rates in particular, which I'll come to, but also sterling-euro with the demise of the current government. We've seen a lot of movement on the pound. So a forward contract allows you to secure the rates for a future date without having the full amount available. So in effect, it's a buy now, pay later type of option. So typically, we would ask clients to put down 10% of however much they wanted to buy, and that allows you to hold the rate for the balance of the property for the active on, and 90% payable on or before maturity date. So one of the main benefits of buying a forward contract means you can budget very early on, so you know exactly what you're paying for without any nasty surprises. If the rate does improve, you are committed with the price you bought at. However, if it falls, ultimately you've saved yourself some money. So it's a peace of mind contract more than anything else. It's also very, very useful if you have money that's stuck in a bond, money that's stuck in a pension, money that's stuck in investments, or money that you're tied up in a house sale that you don't necessarily have all the money, but you'd like to actually fix the exchange rate. So at Lumon, we often ask clients, would you buy a property in your own country without knowing the exact price that you'll pay for in the next 3 months? So demonstrations below, I'm going to give you a couple of demonstrations of what's actually happened during 2025, which in the last couple of months, rates have been relatively flat sterling euro, but in the 6 months prior to that, we've seen an awful amount of movement. So for example, clients buying at the high point on sterling euro compared to the low point during the last 12 months would have seen an 8 cent movement. So 8 cents on a £200,000 transfer works out 16,000 euros, which pays for your kitchen. It pays pretty much for most of the notaire fees as well. and obviously has a big impact on budget. So things like economic data, including interest rate changes, jobs data, inflation data, unemployment, all the boring stuff, to name but a few. This can often impact currency rates both positively and negatively, depending on the data. However, arguably, political movements such as elections and changes in government or policy can also have an enormous impact on foreign exchange rates. So if we've got some Americans on the call, we've seen an enormous amount of movement since Trump was inaugurated in late January 2025. So dollar-euro rates since the start of 2025, we've seen a rate movement of over 14% from the high to low for US dollar rates, which has often been negatively moved by some of Trump's rhetoric. So I think we were looking at earlier on a 200,000 transfer, you're talking about 30,000 as a difference, which is incredible. And sometimes during my time, which is say I've been here a very long time, when clients don't take forward contracts, and we're not saying that clients should or shouldn't, it's up to them, but sometimes we've had clients that cannot afford to buy the property because of the way in which currency's moved against them. So that's the main benefit of the forward contract. We've also got a couple of other things. One is called a stop loss, which some clients use, but the other useful one is called a limit order, which particularly when we see a lot of volatility in exchange rates, clients will say, I don't want to buy just yet, but if you can you buy at a certain price for me? We agree a contract and that goes into the market. It's called, I've forgotten actually off the top of my head. Yeah. Something
we can come back to that.
Yeah, this is quite a long day for me. I've got young kids. Yeah, but a limit order allows you to pre-agree a price without it being currently available. So if it hits, and the beauty of doing that, particularly for our clients in far afield, particularly America, if you're 8 hours behind, we're not going to call you at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, oh, your dollar-euro rate has hit this, or sterling-euro has hit this at sort of 8 p.m. in the night. But clients, as I say, they can put in a limit order, which means if we can buy that currency for them at any stage, we'll automatically buy it if we're able to as well. So a very useful tool for clients during a volatile period, and also if they've got a bit of time to play with.
Okay, so great, thanks, Tom. We didn't actually get.
By the way, it was good till cancelled. I've just remembered. GTC good till cancelled.
It's amazing how quickly your mind can go blank, isn't it? We didn't get the slide that you mentioned, but I think you explained it all very well. And people may think, why bother with contracts? But I think, you know, your example of what a difference it can make to a price of a property, and also that stark reminder that if it goes the wrong way against you, you might not even be able to afford the property. So exactly. That's great. So sticking on financial topics, Joanna, could you explain what hidden costs there may be when buying a French property, any fees, and also any ongoing costs that people should be aware of?
Well, generally, if it's a relocation, it's going to be the primary residence. It's not going to be a secondary home. So in that respect, there's two taxes in France: taxe habitation and taxe foncière. If the home is your primary residence, it's the only home you have, and it's the only one you live in France, then you only pay one tax, which is the taxe foncière. So there's no hidden costs in France. Everything is very, very transparent. You know, you'll be told what those taxes are before you even sign a compromis de vente, what the taxes have been on the property, etc. The notaires fees and the agent's fees are in the compromis de vente, so it's all put out quite clearly, so you know exactly what you're signing for and exactly what you're paying. Because if there is some negotiation on price, or the agents reduce their fees, or the vendors reduce their costs, everything is detailed in that compromis de vente, so it's very, very transparent. So when you come to sign with taxe foncière, whatever month it is, say you buy the property in June, the current owner will be paying taxe foncière up until June, and then you will take it over for the other 6 months. If that person has paid it for the year, you'll be liable to refund that person for the 6 months on taxe foncière. The notaires fees, the agency fees are all the agency. The agency fees vary from property to property and depending on the price of the property, but in all of the advertising, it clearly states what that is, what that fee is, and what percentage that is. A notaire's fees can vary between 6 to 9 or 10%, usually around about 7 or 8% a notary fee. But again, it depends how much work they're doing, whether they're going through a mortgage application and stuff with you or not. But generally speaking, they're quite straightforward. They do vary depending on what area you're in, like the door join might be totally different to the Côte d'Azur, but it's not by much. But again, it's extremely clear, and it's going to be said to you right at the time before signing anything what that notaire's fee is going to be. So all of those fees are paid on the day you come through Tom at Lumon. They send it prior to the completion date. All the monies are held in the notaire's account, and then the notaire pays everybody. So the notaire will be responsible if there's an agent involved to pay the agent, the notaire will pay the vendor, and the notaire obviously will pay themselves. There is some occasions whereby if there's been a problem with the house, or you visited the house and there's a dispute on the actual day, the notaire has the right to hold back some of your money that you're buying the property with and not pay the vendor all of it until that problem is sorted out. So it's a really, really safe protection for any buyer in France. You're not going to worry that anything's going to go wrong in the signing. And that very, in the 23 years I've been in the business, it very, very rarely happens that, there's a problem on the day of the signing, but it can do. So that's basically how it works. After that, so you're going to be expected to pay your taxe foncière every year. Depending on what area you are, we have bin costs. So because France is very, everything that's recycling is free bin. So your wine bottles or your glass bottles is all free of charge, which is great news. And your cheese wrappers, they're all free of charge in the recycling bin. But any waste, in our area now, we have paid for bins. So you have a little card, you pay €200 for the year, 230 euros for the year, and you have a little card that opens up the bin and you put your bin in. So it's a really good system of keeping France green because you really do separate your bins. So for recycling. So that's a little cost that you might have. Then you've got to look at other things. Are you in a co-prop? Are you in a development where you've got, swimming pools that are shared ownership and things like that you might have to have costs for? But again, that will all be explained at the beginning. The only other things I'd always say to be wary of is if you're coming over to do any kind of renovation, or we're going to do a fixer-upper, we're going to do all the work ourselves, etc. Sometimes people underestimate the cost of building work, and they underestimate the cost of building materials. And I know particularly from the UK, because the properties compared to the UK are so cheap, and it's unbelievably cheap. But when you come to actually doing the repairs, it's exactly the same. It's not cheap repairs, and it's sometimes the things are more expensive. So just be aware of, the living costs and repair costs and, paint and things like that. Sometimes they're more expensive than the country you're actually coming from, even though the property's quite low value. So other than that, I've never found, it's been the greatest place I've lived, and there's no hidden costs. Even agencies, I think it's the same in the States, but we're all licensed. It's a licensed profession. You have to do certain training hours. You have to do all this. Everything is so transparent and by the book. So I don't think there'll be any hidden costs. Everything will be explained at the time of the signing of the original contract of the compromis de vente.
That's great. Thanks, Joanna. Very reassuring. Okay, so something else people worry about is dealing with the notorious French red tape. So Tracy, you can help people with a lot of things they may come up against, can't you? I know that obviously covers a lot of different things, but maybe you could give a quick sort of overview of the kind of things you can help with.
Yeah, sure. I mean, France is notorious for the difficult bureaucracy, but when I came to France 30 years ago, I actually struggled with all the paperwork. It wasn't back in the day. They say it's got easier, but actually it hasn't. Online systems have facilitated it, but there's no human contact. So there is this, disconnection as well going on. I would say, don't be too hard on yourself if you're not making it work. If you are struggling, it's absolutely normal. Don't forget, it's also a different language as well, so it makes it more complicated. I'm kind of the glass half full type of person, so I try and encourage people not to worry too much. It can be done, but yes, there is a lot of paperwork to get through. So as we've discussed a lot of visas, that is what people look at the first step. But even before you come to France, you got to reach out to the HMRC, of course, and let them know you're moving to France. In America, you've got the same type of process to go through. You want to organise your logistics, of course, with the Bett brothers, or if you're the US, of course, you have to organise a transporter. You've got your animals to organise to come across. It's all part of a relocation that we work on. We don't just work on the paperwork. There's a whole relocation. So there's the work before you come to France, and there's the work when you get into France. So let's say now you've come into France, you've validated your visas. What's the next thing you're going to work on? Of course, you need to make sure you've got a bank account. You might have used Lumen to have your wallet and things like that, which is fabulous, but you will need to have a French bank account. And again, Paulette can possibly even help you get the bank account set up as well. You will need to have your utilities organised, of course, because that you need a French bank account to pay for utilities. All of these we can help you with. You have to think as well, if you come on your visa, if it's a business visa, that's a project to come into France to get a visa. The project has to become a reality, so the business has to be created. Most people, of course, will work on a small micro-entreprise, so the auto-entrepreneur type system. So we will create that business for you. We will manage the AirSAF, we'll manage the social charges, the business taxes, and the personal tax as well for that first year in France. Because what's important in all of these different steps that we will take with you is to get to the renewal stage and have the right documents for your renewal. So each little step is a step in the direction towards the renewal and the next year in France. And as Paulette so rightly said, we talked about the healthcare and the affiliation, and I kind of smiled about how long that can take, because it can take. And I say to my clients, okay, you're in France, we're validated, let's get started on your healthcare. Yes, generally speaking, it's 3 months before you can start. Let's take the F1 off the table at this stage, it's 3 months. But we will start straight away because it takes a couple of months to consolidate all the paperwork that has to be sent off. There is a huge amount of paperwork for a healthcare file, a huge amount. I find them even more difficult than some visas. That's how complicated they be. And believe it or not, the CPAM still loses paperwork because a lot of it is paperwork orientated. So that's why what is a 4 to 6 month process can be longer, because the CPAM will come back to you with a letter saying, oh, we didn't receive that document, or we didn't receive that document. So you have to start all over again. So that can take a while. And bear in mind as well, the famous carte vitale, which everybody wants, it's the holy grail, does not give you access to healthcare. It facilitates the reimbursement process. What gives you access to healthcare is that famous social security number that you're going to get. So once you get your social security number, that's already wonderful. Reach out to the carte vitale, and of course reach out to Paulette to get that top-up mutual in place once you've got your social security number. You've got your driving license exchanges. So for the UK, the British driving license exchange is a Brexit agreement. But for your Americans, make sure you've got that reciprocity in place. So some states you can exchange, some states you can't. Let us know if you're not quite sure. We have a whole list of that. Then you've got your tax declarations, and then before you know it, you're around to the renewal stage. Month 8, month 9, you've got to renew your visa. And even if you're on a business visa or a talent visa or on your visitor's visa, you're going to renew at year 1 before you'll get your multi-annual visa that comes through. So that comes right at month 8 renewal, and that all those steps you've taken or we've taken with you is to get you to that renewal. And if it's a business visa, we want to get you either a 2-year or a 4-year residency card, of course. If it's a visitor's visa, you're only going to get a 1 year. So I know that's a lot of information. I know it sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, and it actually is, but it can be done in a good way. And yes, we can help you. So don't worry, don't get stressed out. Just reach out if you need support.
That's great. Thanks, Tracy. And it doesn't all have to be done at once. So don't be put off, people out there.
It takes a year. Yeah, it takes a year.
So we are coming to the end of the hour, but it would be great if we could just fit in a couple more key areas before we close. So Paulette, if you could just quite quickly cover home insurance, because this is something else that people should be aware of before they move to France if they're buying or renting a property.
Yeah, so when you're buying a property, most notaires will ask, well, I think the majority of notaires will ask for a copy of the insurance certificate on the day you go to sign the acte de vente. And if you're renting a property, generally you won't be given those keys until you give an insurance certificate. Insurance for a tenant is compulsory in France because it's kind of the liability against claims is shared between an owner and a tenant. Say, for example, if there's a water leak, the redecoration is done on the tenant's insurance and the repairs done on the owner's insurance, even though it's no fault of the tenant. It's just how it is. It's not a big claim or anything. It's just how it's done. And the biggest thing for me of the difference between home insurance I'll use the UK and France is that it includes public liability insurance, which it doesn't exist on home insurance in the UK. So, for example, the responsibility civil, which is your public liability insurance, will cover damage or injury that you cause to someone or something. That it will be claimed off your home insurance instead of that person. Say if you knock your friend's TV off the wall, it'll be claimed on you because you caused that damage rather than your friend claiming on their insurance. So there's more to it than that, but that's the quickest I can explain that.
Great, thanks, Paula. That was very quick, and obviously people can come to you for more clarification about home insurance and what they need to know. So one final question for Tom. People might think that their relationship with their currency company ends once they've bought their property, but they may still want to be transferring money, for example, UK pensions to France and so on. How can a currency company help with that? I believe you offer things like regular payment plans and things like that.
We do indeed, absolutely. So we've still, as I mentioned before, I've been here since 2003. We still have clients that I spoke to in the first couple of months when I first joined that are still using us, believe it or not. So we offer services for ongoing living expenses, mortgages, pensions, any other smaller transfers, gifts to grandchildren, buying stock, any sort of different, it's not just property that we do. We can help clients from very, very small amounts. If you need to pay for a very small bill, we can absolutely do that. So typically when clients first start trading with us, they do the deals with us over the telephone. When they're much more comfortable, we ask them to use our online platform. It's suitable for very small amounts, so they can move their money whenever they need to. And the process of trading online is very simple. The client will be given a login and a password to access the platform. We have a two-factor authentication, which means you just need your mobile with you. They'll send you a code to allow you to send payments and create trades as well. So it's a secure system as well. We also offer something called a regular payment plan, which allows clients to set up a standing order from anywhere from £100 to £5,000 to their selected beneficiary. So if you are getting paid a mortgage, if you need to pay for a mortgage, or you need to transfer your pension and you know you're getting, for argument's sake, £1,000 every month, you can use our services for that. So clients can also edit their standing order, so it's not a committed process. They don't have to sign up for 12 months. They can turn it on and off, cancel it, or increase the volumes as and when required. So it's very suitable if you want a sort of arguably a very simple, stress-free experience, which works very well. Finally, we also help clients when they do sell their property overseas. So hopefully none of you on this call will be looking to sell your property, because I guess you haven't even bought one yet. But if in 5-10 years time, or however long in the future, we can certainly help you repatriate your money as well. So we can help you for any amounts from large, small, medium, in between.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tom. So that does bring us to the end of this webinar. Thank you for joining us. The next webinar will be a USA special on the 9th of December, especially for our American viewers and clients. Details about that will be sent to you by email about how to register and so on. You'll also receive a recording of this webinar, which is really handy if you want to go over something again. We have covered an awful lot in this hour, and it's really handy to be able to go back, listen to it again. You might have missed some details when you nipped for a cup of tea or something like that. So in the meantime, if you want to ask any questions, if you've got any further questions for our panel, all their details are on the screen. They're very happy for you to contact them direct, and they'll be able to help you. So thank you again for joining us. I'll just pass over to our panelists to say their farewells. So over to you, Joanna.
Hi, yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. And just to let you know, we're also, most of us, at the show in January, the 24th and 25th in London. So if anybody's there, you can come and talk to us on the stand and ask us any questions you like. But as Karen says, drop us an email. If we haven't answered your questions tonight, we can do it by email after the webinar. And thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joanna. And I'm very much looking forward to the French property exhibition in London in January, as Joanna mentioned. We do hope we'll see some of you there. So over to you, Tracy.
Yes, absolutely. Fabulous, wonderful evening. Thank you so much. I won't be here in December, of course, but I will be joining Joanna and Karen and Paulette at the France show in January, so we can all answer questions at the different booths. So come and see us there. And thank you for the wonderful questions, Karen. It's been a really good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Very kind. And Paulette, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Happy to help as always. All of my team, every single one of us has been through the relocation process. We all made it. We're all in France. We're all happy, and we can share all of that advice and give you as much help as we can, and share what we've been through. We will be at the French Property Exhibition in January, but as our partner company, L'EGGETT. So if you're walking around looking for the AXA stand, you won't find us, but it's the same. We're all the same team. We'll just have the name L'EGGETT. And for our UK clients, you can contact us by email. You won't be able to see our website, unfortunately, from UK, but you can contact us by email. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. And if anybody wants any more information on the French Property Exhibition, if you just Google French Property Exhibition, it comes up straight away. It's in London in January, and we also have one in Birmingham in May. And so finally, over to you, Tom.
Well, just to say, it feels like I'm watching the end of a football match where people are disappearing early, because I've already seen quite a number of the attendees drop off in the last 6 minutes. So I'll make this very quick. Thank you very much for attending the webinar. I hope you found it useful with all the panelists. Any questions, you've got our details, so feel free to get in touch. And hopefully, if you do end up moving to France, Lumon can help you with your foreign exchange requirements as well.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tom. And thanks to our panelists, and thanks to you for joining us. Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.